y'all, it's your girl Diamond. We are back at it again with another podcast. Please do not mind the background noise. Albie is currently watching his show. For those who are going to be clutching their pearls about this topic, please, we will be talking about sexual assault in this podcast, so please just understand this. I've been thinking about this for a minute, and it's actually been on my mind for 2 weeks to actually do this video. I was thinking about if I wanted to do it a video or an actual podcast. To be honest with you, it was something that's been on my mind for a minute, so it's I don't want to keep just having it on my mind. It's actually two different parts, because in the video where I did, and y'all can actually go look back at this, the truth about my toxic relation, my 3-year toxic relationship, whatever case may be, I confirmed about the fact that I was actually, the abuse for me, sexual assault started when I was 6 years old. It didn't stop until a little bit after me being 19, because that's when I got recently into the relationship that I was in, and that's when all those patterns and stuff stopped. So imagine being from, and the thing that really hit me, that made me realize I still had some healing to do, was because the sexual assault first started when I was 6 years old, and it was by a family member, and this family member was actually 14 years old at the time. And to be honest with you, when I told my family, I didn't even tell my family. I happened to be at a sleepover with one of my cousins or whatever, and I was talking to my cousin, and I was talking to her, and her older sister happened to overhear me talking about me telling her what was going on or whatever the case may be. And she already knew, what was going on, because when I told her, hey, this is what's going on with me, I didn't even know, first of all, when I was telling her about all of this stuff, that her sister was up and hearing the shit that I was telling, my cousin. Because we were supposed to be sleeping, but yeah. So basically, this kind of started for me when I was 6 years old. And I wanted to talk about this because, like I said, I wanted you guys to be a part of my healing journey and stuff like that. Because I didn't bring you guys a part of... First of all, one of the things that I built my channel off of was authenticity in the first place. So I feel I might not just be the only person who is thinking about this or reminiscing and, wanting this to be a part of their healing. I feel God has been talking to me for a minute, get your truth out, speak your truth. But to be honest with you, this is not an easy topic to talk about. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Anyways, so it started back when I was 6 years old. Keep in mind, I didn't live with my mother. I lived with my grandparents. So my grandparent, they was young as hell when I was about. So my grandmother always had to work and stuff. So during the weekends, I would go to my great grandmother's house and stuff like that, and spend the weekend, with her. Not the weekend, but spend that weekday with her. And so, my grandmother's house was a place to be. So it wasn't just my grandmother and grandfather living at my grandmother's house. Sometimes my cousins and everybody would come over during the weekends or whatever the case may be, and we would all just have a great time. So it was one specific day, I had asked my great-grandfather, hey, can he, help me with my pants or whatever? And he sent me in the room with my cousin. And lo and behold, he was doing God knows what. And I just so happened to be a victim for a year plus after that. And then I didn't realize, to be honest, how sexual assault had an effect on me. I didn't realize that it had an effect on my hypersexuality and how I presented myself in the world. Literally, it had an effect on so many things, because for one, imagine you being a 6-year-old kid and you're being questioned yo, what is going on? Did this really happen to you? Did this person really touch you? And it's the fact that my family made me feel I could talk to them and I could trust them, etc., just for them to just shit on me and be well, did this really happen to you? And recently, another reason why motherfuckers was getting cut off is because as I was talking to somebody close to me, this is what made me realize we wasn't as close as I thought I was, because instead of them trying to help me get my story out so my story can be told, because as somebody who's been a victim of sexual assault, you yourself should know how that shit feels. You should know, hey, I'm not going to protect no more abusers, because I don't give a fuck what the situation is. An abuser and is an abuser at the end of the day. And I just was very off put by the factor. And I was just yeah, no. So when I spoken to her and I told her, I was yeah, that really made me kind of upset, and it put me off, because you were the person that went through all of these adventures with me. Like, I'm always like, coming to you when these things are happening to me, so like these things are like accurate things that are happening. And I just like that was one of the most hurtful things, but it kind of made my vision like more clearer about who I should allow in my circle. I'm on the podcast, babe. Who I should allow in my circle and who I shouldn't. And to be honest with you, it was just one of those things where it's just like, I started realizing that in a black family, in the black community, sexual assault is covered up so much, guys. That is why it's important for you to be careful who you leave your kids around, because I'm pretty sure my grandmother trusted the people that I was left around. But let's be so fucking for real. If you know for a fact that you have that uncle, that aunt, that cousin, whatever the case may be, and you know that they touch on kids, instead of telling your kids to watch what they wear, watch what they say around these people, they'll bring them around these people and they'll look at them stupid when some shit happens to them. I don't care. I'm spilling it all today because I'm tired of thinking about how is people going to respond to this. Like, because I'm not the only one. Okay, I'm not the only one who's went through this. And to the people who used to experience things like playing house with family members and people close to you, that shit triggers the fuck out of you when you get older, because then you wonder, like, why is it that I can't be around my cousins, or why is it that I can't be in a room with them without being awkward? And it's like, bro, it's because we were all feeling on each other and doing inappropriate shit that we shouldn't and had no business doing. And realistically, it's one of those things where it's just like, to be honest with you, a lot of people can tell me that certain things that happened to me sexually was because of me. But let's be real. The girl that's acting overly sexual or putting herself out there, you gotta ask yourself, what happened to her? What caused her to have this happen? What caused her to come into the situation? And that's why I say, in a lot of the situations that I've experienced, whether it's sexual violence, emotional violence, whatever the case may be, I always reflect on my childhood, and I look at how my childhood was. And to be honest, I had a great childhood outside of like, the things that happened to me. But I started understanding certain things, and I know these are terrible things that happen, you feel me? But it's one of those things where it's like, I started realizing that God did not allow these things to happen to me for no reason. My testimony is going to help so many women around the world. And I didn't understand that at the time, because I really was angry, because I'm like, God, if you really who you say you are, why are you letting these men come to me and do these things to me? Like, why are you allowing this shit? And like I said, that was the first time that it happened. The second time that I was actually physically touched outside of like that scenario, I had to be in I was in elementary school, actually. I was in elementary school, and I did a video on this, actually. I think I'm going to do multiple parts on this, because I feel like we all need to talk about this just a little bit more. This is, like, the more you're scared to talk about a topic, ladies and gentlemen, the more that the shit will be covered up. Then people be like, why is it that people who are raped and stuff like that do not come out 50 years plus? Because, one, if you're constantly going to be shunned, or, for example, like, after I came out about, I didn't even come out. I didn't get a chance to come out. It was like one of those things where it was done for me. You know what I mean? So once that information and everything got out, it wasn't a thing where I had a choice to say, hey, I wanted to be a victim, or I wanted somebody to ask me, hey, was I okay? Because it became one of those things where you would think like the person who did it would be the black sheep, but it was actually me, because it was like, I started to realize that this was actually a cultural thing. You know what I mean? Like, incest was actually a thing that was brought up, like, way, way, way back then. And people be like, oh, that's that Caucasian people stuff. Sweet Home Alabama, like, we make all these jokes, etc., etc. But it actually started with our race. So let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Let's talk about it more, because the more we don't talk about it, the more we have. You got to keep in mind, this generation is having kids like it's nobody's business. Do you really want the next generation of kids to, like... I was just thinking about this the other day, because I'm thinking to myself, like, I have a son, and I plan on having more kids later on in the future, but it's like, if I'm not, like, listen, like, I thought about it, like, if you're saying that you're building your platform on authenticity, and you're worried about this, you're worried about that, like, these are topics that actually need to be talked about, whether people want to hear about it or not, whether people shy away from listening to these type of things. It's just something that you want to bring to surface, because if you're seeing that not a lot of people are talking about it, but you know for a fact that, like, I've spoken to so many people in my lifetime, and let's just say, on a number of hands, it's been more than 10, like on more than the hands that I can count. It's been more than enough people that can say that they can relate to these stories. So it's an unfortunate thing, because it's like one of those things where it's like, y'all can relate, but I'm not seeing enough content talking about it. And it's crazy and ironic, because recently this week I've been seeing nothing but content on these topics, and to be honest, this was one of the things that I was very scared to talk about. But now it's no longer like one of those things. So anywho, like I was saying, like in elementary school, I actually did a segment. It's another podcast. It's called The Popular Boy, and then it's the emoji with the mask covering the mouth, and it says the popular boy blanked me. And what I mean by that is I'm gonna just tell a little, like, slight story, whatever case may be, story time. I was very young, and let's just say, like, mind you, undiagnosed autism during this time, elementary school. So naiveness is not a word, but I just made it up, whatever. Not being naive was one of the things that I realized, like, very early on was a very, obvious character trait of that. And ditzy, the blonde girl brain, whatever you want to call it, yeah. So this person asked me, hey, do you want to do this, that, and third? And I told them, like, no, that's not what I'm, trying to do, whatever, because maybe. A little bit after that, I ended up, allowing myself to do these things, but I started realizing very early on, like, hey, I don't like this, especially once it got out. It was one of those things where my reputation was tarnished for the wrong reasons. I felt like people only knew me for that specific thing, and it was like, I was annoyed because it was rumors constantly being spread around, like, I got around all of these things, and because I started dressing differently, because of the things that were going on, and the things that I was doing behind, like, during my own time, it's not like I was getting around actually. It was just because of the things that people were hearing and the way that I started dressing and changing, etc. It was, and keep in mind, this was happening very young. I had to be like, 15, 16. And, people going to judge you, etc., but not really know the full story, right? This person in particular, I did tell them a little bit of background information because we had been going to school together for about a couple of years, because keep in mind, we have been knowing each other since the second grade, y'all. Like, this was not just somebody that I randomly just ended up, you know what I mean? We had known each other for a long time, and this person was very well known in my area at the time. And I was just so fucking floored, because I'm like, there's no way. And I wasn't the only girl that this was happening to, actually. Where it was like they were, being touched, beyond their will, or whatever kissing be. Like I said, at first it was consensual, and then it became this thing where it's like, if I tell you no, you're now putting your hands on me, or saying mentally fucked up shit so that I'm fucked up mentally later on. And I didn't realize, like, these things was going to actually mess me up mentally later, until, like, I realized, like, it was certain things that I didn't do. It was certain ways that I started looking at myself after dealing with these things, or after going through these things. And it was just so many things that I felt like it had a factor and a play and a part of it. But that was just one of them. Again, what people don't talk about is when someone takes, like, I'm not going to use the R word too frequently, because I don't know how YouTube feels about it, and I don't want to go against too many community guidelines, because they've been giving me, like, bullshit cut back to back. So we got to fix that. But anyway, we're going to use the R word. You guys know what that stands for, right? People don't realize, but when you give when somebody takes something from you, especially a sexual experience from you that you didn't want to be taken from you, they're basically R-wording you spiritually. Because your spiritual mind knows that it's non-consensual, right? So it kind of takes a part of you every time those things happen to you. So again, me not realizing how these things affected me not realizing, like, yo, this is going to affect me when I'm older. Because that was one of the things that I didn't realize. Like, I used to always tell myself, I want to have kids, right? When I found out that I was pregnant, I prayed to God that I was having a boy, right? Because I said to myself, instead of, like, hating the whole male species altogether, have a kid. And that way you teach them how to be differently. You teach them how to ask for consent. You teach them how to treat women a certain way. That way you don't have to worry about more men being born into this world and being raised up and not knowing how to treat women properly. You be the difference that you want to see, right? Right. So I prayed God for and asked him for direction and guidance, because there was a lot of shit that I just personally did not know. And I thought I knew coming into parenting, but I really did not know. And I did not know, for one, that parenting is going to force you into healing. Because one thing about parenting, you gotta reparent yourself, first of all, because before you can like parent a kid, you gotta reparent yourself. And to be honest with you, one of the things that really like made me realize like, hey, I had healing to do was, and this is a true story, right? A little bit before because where do we keep most of our trauma? Like, this is a little Q&A, like not a Q&A, but this is a little pop quiz, right? Where do most of our trauma get stored? In our womb area, right? So most of our trauma is getting stored in our womb area. Don't you think that once you get pregnant, those trauma wounds are going to resurface, right? Because it's something being held in that space, occupying that space. Your baby amplifies that pain and that trauma that you went through. Whether you want to believe that or not, that's why a lot of women say that pregnancy has changed them, or having kids changed them. Because one thing we don't realize is having kids force us to look at ourselves. It forces us to really, really, really get in tune with ourselves and our spirit, etc., so that we know how to even parent and teach another person. Because I can go into that all day, but I want to get back on topic. Another thing, right? The craziest thing about this that really, really, really helped shape and mold a lot of things that made me realize I need help with healing, as far as like, moving on to the next step, was I started realizing that I was really angry, because it was one of those things where, how like you dissociate for a long period of time and you start realizing like, oh shit, like, okay, so let me use this metaphor, right? This is a better metaphor. You know how you just have a bunch of like dust underneath a rug, and you just kind of like, you're lazy, so you're like, okay, it's a bunch of dust under there. I just sweeped up. I don't feel like getting the dustpan to actually clean up my mess, so I'm just going to sweep everything else under the rug, right? So that's basically what I did with my journey, as far as, my healing and the things that I had to fix as far as my sexual wounds, because that's a wound, that's a trauma wound, right? I didn't realize that because of most of my life, I felt like I was not in control of my own body, and I didn't have my own. Recently, y'all, I have to go and get some cough drops because my throat has been really like, you know what I'm saying? Like, my throat chakra has been blocked a little bit. Let's just say that. But recently I noticed, like, I was just saying to myself, I was like, hold on. It's a lot of things that I just had a brain fart, like a... Come on, get down. It's a lot of things that I have to like work on as far as like healing certain wounds. And the craziest thing for me was like when I realized that I wasn't safe anywhere. You feel me? Because I thought because the things were happening, eventually, when the stuff that I started telling you guys about in the beginning about me, when I was 6 years old, recognizing me, that stopped eventually because it came out. But let's be so fucking for real. Imagine your whole family coming in and they're gathering around, crying with you about this shit that, like, is the worst thing that could ever happen to you, right? And then this person goes to juvenile hall for, like, probably, like, a day, and then they get out, and then life is just normal for them again, and then you're the problem. And then keep in mind, you going through this shit in elementary school, middle school, etc., etc. And then sometimes people, like your teachers, will see the actual assault going on. And instead of them pulling you aside and getting you help and actually helping you, they decide because this person is an athlete or they're A1 athlete or this, that, or third, they can't put them in trouble because that might be bad for their team, or that just may not be a good look because this person is well known. You feel me? And it's like, to be honest, it's like, what the fuck? Well, who protects me? And then when you start realizing like it's actually a thing to keep everything hush hush, you stop caring to think like maybe something wrong with me. Like, you start realizing that there's something wrong with our system. Because keep in mind, like, you ever, and this may be a little bit off topic, but you ever try to tell your parents that came from the older generation, like, something about what's going on now, or like, so certain views or social issues, and they try to basically tell you like, oh, you're just, overthinking it, or you're overreacting, or whatever the case may be. And it's like you realize like there's really tragic shit going on, but because they're so brainwashed, because of earlier generations, and they believe everything that's being told to them. It's like, damn, we're doomed. If it was up to the older generation and this generation, we would be doomed. Because think about it, a lot of them had to do things their way because that's how they were taught. We're now making new and paving new ways for ourselves. You feel me? Like, I don't know if y'all see it, but a lot of the people in this generation is creating their own generational wealth for themselves. Like, we're no longer waiting for shit to happen to us and fall in our lap. Like, we're literally making our own ways. And I think that that's so beautiful. It's just a simple factor that, like, one of the things that I've been noticing that I'm definitely, like, I haven't started therapy yet, but this is one of the things that I'm going to do. I tend to use, like, my podcast as a form of, like, releasing, etc., and hopefully, like, you know, I help other people as well release, you know, the things that they need to release. But it took me a long time to realize that the things that were happening to my body were just simply not my fault. However, some people can say, like, oh, well, you allowed this, that, and the third. Well, have you ever heard of, we have 3 defense mechanisms when we're going through things that are uncomfortable for us. And one of the defense mechanisms that we have is fight, freeze, or fawn. Fight is when you immediately feel threatened, so you feel like your fight or flight senses is activated, and, you know, that's when your adrenaline is rushing and, you know, yeah, stuff like that. Fawn is, I think, when you just, like, have, like, I don't remember what fawn is. You guys have to probably search that one up. But freeze, you know, that one is, you know, typically, you know, it's self-explanatory. Freeze is where, like, you know, you just stop everything. And most of the time during when these things would happen to me, I would notice that I would freeze up a lot. And to be honest with you, like, I couldn't believe that sometimes it would be grown-ass men that was doing this shit. And it didn't matter whether I was saying, hey, I don't want this to happen, or I didn't want this, that, and the third. It was never a thing of, I'm going to stop because I want to stop. And that was one of the things that I said to myself, hey, I'm going to teach my son consent. Because I'll be damned if another woman has to deal with this shit on the behalf of a seed that I helped create. On behalf of a human being that I helped bring into this world. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be able to live with myself because I know personally what it feels like to have those showers where you damn near want to steam your body off. Because you were touched beyond consent. You know what I mean? And if you know that feeling, those after shower feelings, I'm so sorry. And I hope that you find the healing that you deserve, because it's an everyday process. But back to what I was saying. What really made me start being more aware is I started doing womb healing exercises, right? Because I'm very much into my spirituality. I'm very much into things that, you know, help me grow on an everyday basis, because I am a parent. So anyways, I've been doing some womb healing exercises and things like that. And you ever watch, like, if you're on TikTok and stuff like that, and you end up being on Spiritual Talk or whatever, you ever see those videos where you'll see either a woman or a man, and they're having, like, a spiritual, like, it's like they have their own spiritual practice, and you'll see them, like, either holding their patient, or you'll see them, like, touching their stomach or whatever. That's them trying to clear out their womb space, right? So when they're clearing out their womb space, normally you'll either see the patient or their their client laying on, like, either a bed, or they'll be holding them, and they'll just be, like, crying, but it's not a regular cry. Like, it's like a spiritual howl. Like, it's more of like your inner child just releasing whatever it is that was stuck. You know what I mean? So for me, that's something that I realized that I had to do, because there was so much pain within my womb area, and I didn't realize it until I let out certain cries that allows me to, like, realize how much I dissociated from my pain, and how much I allowed myself to believe that everything was okay and it wasn't okay. And that was because of a lot of people around me telling me, like, yeah, you know, this, that, and the third, it wasn't your fault, but shh, don't say nothing because this person could get in trouble. Fuck this person. They need to be in trouble, because if not, it's going to keep happening. And another thing that I genuinely want to talk about is because I didn't realize that these things that were being done to me starting from a very young age was not okay. It allowed me to engage into certain activities like playing house with actual people that were close to me, and it made me start thinking to myself, like, damn, like, had I would have known the effects that this shit would have had on me back then, I would have tread a lot lighter with a lot of things that I did, a lot of things. And let me be very clear, because a lot of people have stories of having actual sexual intercourse with, family members and stuff like that. I've never went that far. However, we were touchy-feely, etc. And mind you, this did not happen in early ages. These things happen, like, I want to say when we were like 10, 11 type shit, you know what I mean? But these were things that were very common. So before people go in comments and start acting a damn fool, really evaluate your own life. And if this is not an experience that you've had, don't knock it, because other people had these experiences, and this is a safe place for all of us to be able to vent and just simply, talk about the things that other people may feel like it's taboo or whatever the case may be. I don't care. There's no such thing as taboo on my channel. We're talking about everything. You know what I mean? Everything we're talking about. The thing about that is, when you realize how much the older generation covers up shit, it'll start making you realize how much sooner you should have spoken up for yourself. And that was one of the things that I had to forgive myself for, was allowing myself to believe like the shit that other people were telling me about myself, etc., etc. Like, for example, a little bit after these things were happening to me, like around 6 years old, 6 years old, I very rapidly, and you got to keep in mind, like, outside of that, I did not have any other outside influences on teaching me about, like, sexual intercourse and things like that. Because, to be honest, I was a Disney kid, a Nickelodeon kid. Like, I didn't pay attention to all that other, stuff. I really didn't stop playing with my Bratz dolls and shit until I was, like, 15. So that's, like, how serious we was into, like, being a kid. So, you know what I mean? So if that's the case, it's just like, let's be so fucking for real. Like, I know it wasn't my fault, because I didn't stop being a kid until like 15. And even then, even to this day, like, I was actually thinking about doing that as like a healing exercise as well. Like, I wanted to get a baby doll. That way I could like reparent like my baby doll, like, so that, I can feel like a kid again and do things like how I used to do. Like, it's more of like a healing exercise for my inner child, so to speak. Like, it's like, and that's another thing. Like, some days I talk to my inner child and I'll say things like, it is okay, it's not your fault. Some days I'll sit down and I'll color with her. Some days I'll sit and look in the mirror and find things about myself that I truly, really, really, really love. Because sometimes it takes that. It takes those extra things to really remember, like, who I was, not just now, not the person that I'm becoming, but also not forgetting the little version, the little mini version of me, the parts of me that I felt like was overlooked, skipped, etc., etc. And you know what I'm saying? Like, those things are really important, because people don't realize that, yeah, we can fix the things that we have wrong with us now, but if we don't heal our inner, like, the smaller kid in us, our relationships are going to show what we need to heal. Our friendships are going to show it. Everything is going to, like, you know what I mean? Everything is going to show eventually. So why not get it under control now? Why not, like, get it to the point where we have understanding for ourselves? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I came to the conclusion this year that I had to learn. I'm sorry, I got distracted a little bit. That's why I started, like, mumbling and stuff. But I came to the conclusion this year that if not now, then when? Because not just my inner child, but I realized that my inner teenager was screaming in rage. You know what I mean? It was the people pleaser in me, because of how many people, like, kind of gaslit me during the time of when I was going through these things. And, I didn't realize that until recently. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to talk about this because it's been on my mind. I'm definitely going to get more into the topic, because I want to talk more about the topic. But it's other topics that I want to talk about surrounding this. like certain things that I, got into, because I want to share all of my experiences with you guys. And I know that some people told me, don't just share everything. Like, why are you so comfortable with sharing everything? Because for one, I have no shame about shit. You know what I'm saying? Everything that happened to me and for me was for a reason. It was either a blessing or a lesson, and that was all for a reason. So, like, don't be upset or ashamed about anything that you've gone through, because it's either going to be a roadmap to somebody else's success, or it's either going to, benefit you in some type of way. You're going to be able to use that. And not a lot of people understand that you can sometimes shift your pain and turn it into, like, you know what I'm saying? You can turn it into, like, something that's worth diamonds and millions of gold. So that's currently what we're doing. This chapter, it's called Shifting Our Pain and Our Focus. Shifting our pain and our focus. And we're no longer allowing, our pain to control us, but more so we're learning about our pain so that it can help us and get us where we need to go. Because realistically, when you don't learn about what's caused you to become a certain way, you stay that way. And I was realizing recently, because I was so angry about the things that I kept in and the things that, really affected me. Like, for example, it wasn't the things that was happening into middle school. The one that really got me was when I realized that it was actually somebody that was older, and they already had children. But at the time I was 14, right? And they kept telling me, like, they knew that the situation and the things that was going on was wrong, but at the same time they felt like that it was worth it. So for me, in my mind at the time, yes, it was consensual at first, but I remember it was one day that I ended up going somewhere with this person, and the person that I ended up telling, the abuse that had happened, I ended up going to a place with this person, but I also went with a trusted friend as well. And they had seen not seen, but they were there, and I explained to them, hey, this had happened, whatever case may be. And I guess because of the situations that I told them prior, they didn't feel like it was, like, non-consensual. But, like, who are you to tell me if I'm doing too much or if this, that, and the third? Like, at the end of the day, I have a right to change my mind. You know what I mean? I have a right to change my mind and say, hey, this is not something I want to deal with anymore. Or this is not someone I want to interfere with. And I said that. And this person knew when I said stop that meant stop. But what really pissed me off is when they openly said to me, hey, like, it doesn't matter who you tell, because nobody's going to believe what's happening. Nobody's going to believe that I would do something like this. Or, like, even if it was to get out, like, I just know that it wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, it was one of those things where it's like, and keep in mind, right? Abusers know what kids to look out for. Keep that in mind. They know the kids that are quiet and that are very timid, and the parents that are scared to ask questions and act a damn fool. Because one thing about me, I'm not the parent that's scared to ask questions or act a damn fool. And my kids will be the type of kids to tell me everything. I won't be telling my kids, because some parents be like, and there's no shade here. There's no shade here. But we will not be calling our personal areas our vajayjay or our cookie or our pee-pee, because sometimes people name and tell their kids to name their private areas little cute nicknames, and then say, for example, you have a daughter and she's trying to tell her teacher, like, hey, such and such touched my cookie, and the teacher is thinking like they touched the actual cookie instead of her personal area. Like, that's why it's, like, very important to talk to your kids. And believe it or not, my parents did talk to me. I just didn't feel comfortable because, to be honest, like, it was like, you don't know how you're going to respond to certain situations until you actually become in those situations. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah, that's all for this podcast today. I just really wanted to speak on it because it's been on my mind and heart. And I've been asking God what to put out there. And he's like, this is one of the things that I've been telling you to put out there, and you've been not listening. So